Hi, welcome back. My name is Cole,
And I'm Andrew.
and this is CTRL-AC.
CTRL-AC is the podcast where we talk about uber smart hackers and tech CEOs hating grandmas. So this episode, we have 4 stories for y'all that we're going to talk about. And then at the end, after the break, we're going to do a first. We have a Q&A segment. So whenever we do these, Cole and I will both post a Q&A story on our podcast Instagram. So if you're not following our podcast Instagram, we're at CTRL-AC there. And then you can submit all of your tech questions and we will answer them and give you a shout out. So first story of the day. This is a pretty recent one. This is from The Verge. The headline is Uber apparently hacked by a teen. Employees thought it was a joke. So Uber says they are investigating a, quote, cybersecurity incident. So the hacker claims to be 18 years old, and they say that they have administrator access to the company's tools, which includes their Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud platform. The New York Times reports that Uber has taken multiple internal systems down, which includes their Slack channel. We'll get to that in a second. And they're investigating this breach. So
This is hilarious.
this is not the first time it's happened too. Like, I thought Twitter was just hacked a while ago by another kid. First off, full disclosure, you shouldn't hack into businesses like this. It's wrong
And illegal.
and illegal. But also, this is a pretty smart kid. Like, if we're being completely honest, this is not easy to do.
It's not.
And he actually pulled it off. So he hacked into Uber's Slack channel. And he said, "Hi, I announce I am a hacker and Uber has suffered a data breach. Slack has been stolen. Confidential data has also been stolen, along with secrets from sneakers." But he said that in the Slack channel. And then all of the IT guys for Uber apparently thought it was a joke. So they didn't do anything.
No.
They didn't do anything about it because they thought someone was just playing a joke on them. And then the Washington Post said that it was so, like, the hacker was just so upfront about it. They thought it was a joke. And then the employees were like responses to it in the Slack channel were all like they were all emojis, like with sirens and popcorn. And then one guy sent an "it's happening" GIF, and it was all like a joke. And then according to the Washington Post, one employee actually responded with, "Sorry to be a stick in the mud, but I think IT would appreciate less memes while they try to handle the breach," which is hilarious.
That is really funny.
But the hacker claims to be 18 years old. He breached Uber for fun, he claims, and then just casually leaked the company's entire source code. And then he gained access to all of their systems, which allowed them to access internal company VPNs. And from there, they found all the scripts, which contained passwords to their AWS and G Suite accounts. This is a really smart kid. I have in the script, he just secured himself a job. Like, after this kid is punished for doing this, he's definitely going to be hired by someone.
There's
Like,
no way he's not.
As ethically wrong as this is, it's kind of funny that a teenager can actually do this. Like, the government needs to hire him. But that's funny. I think as time goes on, we'll just see more and more kids hacking into these huge companies, because we've already seen it with Twitter. We've seen it with Uber. This is honestly funny. So this is pretty hard to do.
Yeah, like this can't be done by just anybody. Like the MISD hack that they held ransom for $250,000.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically, if this kid can somehow if this kid gets out of this, then he's definitely got a job somewhere.
He's going to get bailed out of jail by the U.S. government. Like, he just got a job.
Yeah, something. Okay, so Tim Cook hates grandmas. Hates him.
Like, your grandma, he hates her. Has no regard.
Unless she buys an iPhone.
If she doesn't, he has no regard for the pictures you're trying to send her. Okay, so Vox Media held a code conference, and Tim Cook was there at the conference. A reporter asked Tim Cook about RCS. We've talked about RCS in the past. It's the texting standard that if Apple switched to would eliminate green bubbles and blue bubbles forever. So Tim Cook was asked about that. His response was, quote, "I don't hear our users asking that we put a lot of energy in on that at this point." And then he said, instead, Tim Cook said, and I quote, "I would love to convert you to an iPhone." So this actually is proof that Apple is not switching to RCS so that it can keep using iMessage as a Apple ecosystem lock-in. Vox Media's Laquan Hunt came back with a complaint saying that his mother can't see the videos that he sends her because she has an Android phone. He said if you try to send a video from Android to iOS or vice versa, then it's fuzzy. And then Tim Cook's solution to fix this problem is, quote, "buy your mom an iPhone." So that's kind of like Savage Tim moment. No regard for the poor grandma. Just
Probably poor.
buy her an iPhone. So this is really frustrating for us, especially because we want to see RCS on iPhones pretty badly because the blue bubble, green bubble thing will be gone. But Tim Cook basically just said, "You want RCS? Too bad, just buy an iPhone," which is really disappointing because it just means that they're going to keep using iMessage as a lock-in feature, which just encourages bullying, and then it's a whole string of issues. So really unfortunate to see this. A very Tim Cook thing to say. It's an attitude of anti-competitiveness, selfishness. I mean, it's just really annoying. Speaking of iPhones, iOS 16 is now out. It's really interesting. Every year when there's a new iOS update, it's really interesting for me to see what non-tech savvy people think about it. And like the first few days this has been out, I've seen so many people at school talking about their new lock screen.
Oh yeah, like literally this entire week. I've
Like,
seen, hey, have you guys tried the new iOS 16 yet?
have you seen my lock screen? This is what I have. These are
Yeah.
the widgets I have.
hmm
Have you seen that you can unsend messages? Like, the adoption of this seems to be really good.
And it was taken really well.
Yeah, everyone seems to like it. It's a really stable upgrade. I would definitely upgrade if you haven't already. So that's out now. So is watchOS 9. iPadOS 16, I believe, is delayed, and then macOS Ventura comes out in October. So, and then my experience with watchOS 9 has been pretty fine. The animations are a lot smoother. Like when you get notifications, there's a banner now if you're actively using the watch. My battery life has been slightly worse. It's not super bad, but if it does start to get to a low state, there's a new low power mode. So overall, pretty good. I would upgrade.
And we've both been on the beta for a while, and it's been pretty stable.
Yeah.
So we haven't really seen too many bugs besides battery life, which is the main issue, especially if you're on an older phone. But if you are on a 10 or newer, I've seen no reason not to upgrade.
Yeah, it's really nice. And then last night, we're recording this on Friday. Last night was Thursday Night Football. It was the first Thursday Night Football game on Prime Video. So that's kind of cool. So it was the first football game I've ever watched hosted by a streaming service. So what's interesting about that is it's not being streamed over live TV. It's being streamed through Prime Video. Shockingly enough, Prime Video didn't crash, which was actually kind of nice. It was not in 4K. It was still 1080p, which is a little disappointing, but it looked slightly clearer than actual live football. Like there was a slight clarity difference, but everything else was good. So hopefully we can see like NFL Plus actually come to TVs, because football and sports in general on streaming services seem kind of nice. But there was also a Dude Perfect broadcast. Like Dude Perfect had their own Thursday Night Football broadcast where they were just the commentators.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'd definitely pick Al Michaels over them, but that was interesting. So yeah, Prime Video, Thursday Night Football, pretty big win for sports streaming. It's getting kind of cold outside.
It definitely has started to cool down.
Yeah. Nights are so nice now. Like it's like 60 degrees outside. Weather's great. You know what would be cool?
An outdoor living center.
A fire pit, a pergola, like a whole outdoor living space.
That's a good idea. Have you heard of the Complete Backyard?
No, what's that?
The Complete Backyard is a custom pool, spa, and outdoor living design company. They take care of the design and construction of your new outdoor living space, and you work with them from the very beginning of your project until the end, and they are with you every step of the way. They specialize in custom outdoor goonite swimming pools and spas. In addition, they also design and build custom pergolas, decks, cabanas, fire pits, and outdoor kitchens.
Oh, that's cool. How do I contact them?
You can give them a call at 817-441-6878 to request a consultation, or you can go to thecompletebackyard.com.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so it is time for our first ever Q&A segment. So like we said earlier, we'll do this like once a month, once every 2 months maybe, every now and then. Follow the CTRL-AC Instagram. When we do a Q&A, we'll post a story. You can respond to that story with your tech questions, and we will answer them and give you a shout out. Okay, so starting off, our first one is from Ethan, and he asks, what was the inspiration behind the idea of this podcast?
So for this one, honestly, me and Andrew met because the schedule got messed up and I got put in the wrong language class. So we ended up in Spanish class together instead of me being in ASL. And she asked what we like to do in our free time.
And I basically said, I like listening to tech podcasts. And she was like, our Spanish teacher was like, which podcasts do you like? And I was like, oh, Waveform, the Vergecast. And then I see Cole just like smile.
And I said, and I'm pretty sure my exact words were, oh, have you heard of the podcast, The Test Drivers with Austin Evans?
And I was like, yeah, Austin Evans is great.
And then we just kind of started talking from there. And that's how we became like friends, I feel like. And then we always talked about it like in Miss Cheney's class last year.
Do we want to name drop?
We already are.
Like, do we want to say teachers?
Yes,
though?
that's fine. Yeah, we always talked about it in Miss Cheney's class last year. What if we started a podcast? And then this summer I was talking to somebody and we just got the motivation to.
Yeah. Well, I guess the whole second semester we kind of talked about it. And then as soon as summer started getting closer, we were just like, hey, we should actually do this.
Our first episode was recorded using Riverside so we can both have separate audio tracks. And
then we eventually got sponsored and that let us create our studio. And then it kind of, the rest is history. But yeah.
And here we are on episode 13.
Common ground, beginning of friendship is what started this. So this next one is from Ben. It says, how has the evolution of phones changed over time?
This is a really, really good question, actually.
I feel like we kind of all know like the recent history of the smartphone.
Like everybody knows about the legendary iPhone 6, how it has the weird 1% battery life for an hour and a half.
Yeah, like we all know the recent history of smartphones, but I guess the evolution changing over time is what he's asking. So like,
I don't know if you guys remember, but I mean, you obviously don't remember when it happened, but in 2007, Steve Jobs came on stage with the iPhone 2G.
And before that, there was
flip phones,
slide phones. There were LG phones with touchscreens. I mean, the iPhone wasn't the first one.
But it was definitely the most revolutionary.
It was most revolutionary. But we saw many phones before that. And then after the iPhone, everyone just copied that form factor. And that's how we got the glass sandwich, rectangle, multi-touch screen design.
Yeah.
And then from then on, everyone kind of made phones look like that. And then we saw iPhone 10 and that made it borderless and gave it a notch. And then everyone switched to
a hole punch.
Borderless phones with hole punches and notches. Now we see the iPhone move to a hole punch. So the iPhone is definitely a trendsetter when it comes to design because after they do something, the whole industry follows. But evolution over time, I feel like, is really interesting in the smartphone industry.
So yeah.
Good question. Here's another one from Ben staying on the topic of mobile phones. Has there been a rise to mobile gaming? If so, what has changed over time?
This is actually a really good question.
I feel like mobile games have kind of had, I feel like they've had like two big phases. Like when they started out, like with original iPhones and stuff, because that was when the App Store came out. That was when mobile gaming started becoming popular. We had like Temple Run,
Doodle
Where's
Jump,
My Water, like all of those original OG games. And then as the phones got more and more popular, we've sort of entered the stage 2, which is AAA titles. I think that started with Fortnite. Fortnite on mobile was like the first intense cross-platform mobile game.
Yeah.
Gone now. Rest in peace.
PUBG was one of them too. COD Mobile.
PUBG, COD Mobile. Recently, Apex Mobile,
which just came out.
Insanely intensive.
Yeah. It's like you can't play that without a charger.
But yeah, there have kind of been 2 waves. We've gone from like casual standing in line at the grocery store games to now actual AAA titles.
Like sit at your phone
League
for
of Legends
hours.
too. We saw that with the iPhone 12.
There's also like the idle, like hop on every once in a while, do some tasks, hop off, wait for stuff to load, right? Like Clash of Clans, SimCity Build It, idle clicker tycoons, just games like that don't require any like brain power, but like still are engaging enough to keep you playing for like 45 minutes.
As phones get more and more powerful, I just think we'll see more AAA titles.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I guarantee you a lot of desktop games will come to mobile. Like we already have Apex, Fortnite, PUBG, COD. Like Rainbow Six Siege just came out with their mobile game.
There's supposed to be a Rogue Company mobile coming out soon.
Yeah. So like there's not many more AAA titles to bring to mobile, but
iPhone 20, I want Forza Horizon 6 on mobile.
That'd be nice.
Okay, Luke asks best gaming PC for a good price.
Okay, so for this question, I feel like it just depends on if you want to go AMD or Intel. AMD Ryzen 5 5600. Best 6-core 12-thread processor you can get.
That'll run you
$190 to $195, $200 with shipping or tax or whatever. And then CPU, it just depends if you want air or water cooling. If you want air, I would try to spend a little bit more money on a good, like a Dark Rock Pro 4 or a Noct 2 NHD 15. For RAM, at this point, I wouldn't really go less than 32 gigs. 16 is fine, but like not really for playing any like intensive games.
Just depends on your use case.
Yeah, so like if you're playing Warzone, 32 gigs minimum. It's a very resource intensive game, especially because it has a bunch of assets to load in. You want more RAM because then it'll start swapping with the SSD, and that's not good. And then motherboard, I would just find one that's under $150 that has 128 gig max of RAM. So when you do decide to upgrade, you can always like you have a very high upgrade tier, and then make sure it's obviously compatible with your CPU. And it has built-in Wi-Fi. That's always really helpful. For storage, I would get the Crucial P2. It's a terabyte drive, $76.
Not
best terabyte drive you can get for that price. For a case, this is really subjective. You just pick what you like. If you're going white theme, try to at least match your cooler and your motherboard together. Maybe your RAM too, if you can want to set aside some more money. For a power supply, I would get no less than 750 watts semi-modular, especially if you're new to building PCs. Having a semi-modular power supply is really helpful because you don't have all those excess cables. Remember when we were building that computer together?
Yep.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Fun times.
For cooling, like extra cooling besides the CPU cooler, if you want RGB, it's not that much more money. It's actually really hard to find non-RGB fan kits, but you can get like a $45, $35 5-pack of RGB fans with a little remote or controller on Amazon for super cheap. They look good.
Spend a little bit of extra money if you can on RGB.
Yeah.
When you're done with the build, you will definitely appreciate it.
You will. Unless you're going with like a stealthy build, then you don't want RGB, obviously. And then the graphics card is really an important part because that's how you obviously play games. So for AMD, at this point for the price range, I would get an RX 6600, not the XT, if you can find one for the same price. That's the best AMD GPU price to performance. You can get them for like $250 brand new from Amazon. From NVIDIA side, I would probably go RTX 3050 or 3060. So if you go 3050, that gives you a little bit extra headroom on where to spend your money for RGB or looks.
If you go 3060, you can get it bundled with a monitor.
You can also do that, but that also bumps it up by $150.
But then again, free monitor.
You can always sell it. So
that's pretty much it for the sub $1,000 build.
Yeah, I didn't touch on Intel. If you going Intel route, I would just get like 11th gen i5 or i7. I don't want, for $1,000, bumping to 12th gen wouldn't be beneficial because it will set you back a lot more money.
Right. But yeah, in 2022, a sub $1,000 PC is not as bad as it was a few years ago.
It's really easy. It's so much better than it was last year. Like even last year, it was so hard to build a PC.
And then Ben asks, do better PC specs actually give you a competitive advantage? So our answer to this is depends on the person depends on the game.
So like me, I play video games a lot. I don't play them a lot, but I really like to enjoy the way my game looks. If you're used to a console, then really there's no need to spend more than $500 on a build. If you're used to console and you don't have a lot of money, like you can just sell your console and then build a sub $500 PC. You can get like a used Optiplex or something.
Which will still give you 60 FPS, just like your console.
Yeah, with an RX 6400 in games like Apex, Fortnite, and stuff like that.
In competitive first-person shooters, more frames does give you an advantage.
Yes, it does. Like CSGO.
If you're the type of person who actually notices the advantage. Some
yeah,
people
like
don't.
CSGO, Valorant, Rainbow Six, games like that. Fortnite.
Like, I hate to blame my frames whenever I like lose, but there have been times when, like on GeForce Now, my frames will drop from 60 to 40, and it almost feels unplayable. Like,
yeah,
it's harder to play, and that's only a 20 frame difference. So yes, if you're the type of person who plays like competitively at all, you will get an advantage from spending more money.
And there's also the way the game looks. If you want it to look good, you're gonna have to spend more money, obviously.
Yeah, if you're playing like any esports title, yeah, it would give you an advantage. If you're playing Minecraft or something, like there's really no competitive advantage you're gonna get from fighting a creeper with 240 frames versus 144.
Versus 60.
Versus 60, but depends on the game, depends on the person.
That's a good question,
in general, yes. Very good question.
So Stephanie asked, what's a cool iOS 16 update that people wouldn't necessarily know about?
Let's each give one thing that most people don't know about. Mine, without a doubt, go to settings right now and turn on haptic feedback for your keyboard. It will change your life.
It's so good.
It feels weird for like the first day, but after that, you cannot live without it. It's so nice to have.
Mine is probably the image cutout. So if you hold down on a like relatively simple photo, it doesn't have to be like that simple, but
anything with
a subject,
a depth of field at all.
Yeah. It will cut out the subject of the photo. So I have this picture of my friend Josh here. It's a terrible picture because it's zoomed into 8x. But I still grabbed him. I turned it into a sticker. And then I can just drag this. I can copy it and then paste it into a text. I'll do it right now.
And it's really good.
It's
like it's
really
almost
good.
As good as if you took 30 minutes to actually Photoshop it out.
Definitely an underrated, not very talked about feature.
Good question. She also asks, what's the difference between search engines? Why use Chrome versus Safari?
Main thing is like, okay, preference is one thing.
A lot of our answers to these are just personal preference.
Yeah. So like, obviously there's privacy differences.
Safari is a lot better for privacy because Chrome is Google. Google harvests your data. So if you care about privacy, use Safari. If you're on a Mac, Safari is technically quicker. I hate Safari on Mac.
Oh, it's so bad.
I use Chrome 24/7, but Safari is technically faster and it's a little safer. But if you work a lot with Google Workspace, any G Suite apps, use Chrome.
Honestly, in my opinion, an underrated browser is Opera.
Opera's not bad. Orion is not bad.
Yeah, Opera is a really good-looking browser. There's a lot of customization you can do to it.
But yeah, it just comes down to personal preference and whether or not you use extensions too.
Yeah, because Safari extensions,
use extensions
are very
don't
difficult.
Touch WebKit.
Which is Safari, by the way, for everybody in the world who doesn't know that.
Ben asks, Android versus Apple, which is better? So there are two sides to this. There's hardware side and software side. So hardware side, we're going to do Android phone versus iPhone. Kind of a hard comparison because there are 50 million Android phones and 4 new iPhones each year. So on the hardware side, generally, iPhones lack in hardware improvements. Android phones are far superior. However, because of software optimization, iPhones can have worse camera hardware, worse screen tech, but still have a better looking display, better looking cameras, better performance, all because of software. So on the raw hardware side, Android phones definitely win. But on the software aided hardware side, iPhones win. In terms of software, iOS 16 versus Android 13, it just comes down to preference at this point. Both have been around for over a decade. Both are mature operating systems. They're both really, really good. It just comes down to preference.
And honestly, so stop doing this, is when people say Androids are sucky compared to iPhones. No, your iPhone sucks compared to Android.
Just as good. Like they are, like spec for spec, feature for feature. nearly the same now.
Like, imagine in a different country where, like, oh, you have an iPhone? That's disgusting.
Right. I mean,
Like,
it just,
iMessage is gross in Asia.
right. It's all WhatsApp.
Yeah.
But it just varies. It just varies.
Yeah.
It depends on the person.
Good question.
So, speaking of iPhones, Will asks, whatever happened to the iPhone 9? So, if you remember, they went 6, 6S, 7, 8, 10.
Yeah. They kind of skipped over 9.
So, we don't actually know. My best guess is that iPhone 10 is the number 10, and that's a cooler number than 9. So they really wanted to do a redesign to catch the iPhone up to 2017 standards. So they went from 8 straight to 10 so they could do the
Refresh of the design.
Home buttonless redesign and just skip the 9. They wanted to start with the fresh new number. Charlton asks, what is stopping you from taking an old PC, fixing or replacing a few things, and then making it new again for modern games? This is a good question because I'm looking at an old PC that my grandma gave me that's just sitting in our studio right now. So, I mean, what is replacing someone from just throwing a 3090 in there and calling it a day?
I've been dying to answer this question all day long. Probably none of you have seen this, but UFD Tech did a video. It says, what's stopping you from throwing a 3090 with a quad core from 2005?
It's a good question.
No, this is actually a like burning question among like a lot of the like intro to PC community, right?
Yeah.
Like you just start like you're slowly getting into like the Windows PC like ecosystem now.
You have the old PC you've had for 5 years. You save up enough money for a 3090. Can I just throw that in my old PC?
So I'm gonna go into a little rant story here. I'm just gonna spend a little bit more time on this one, but because there's a lot to this question. So back in I think like 2015, me and my stepmom got my dad a new computer for his birthday. It was pretty bad. It had an AMD A8 and it was a quad core node, or it was 2 cores, 4 thread CPU, built-in microprocessor, right? And he gave me his old computer, which had a Core 2 Duo E7500, 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM, and a little 1 terabyte hard drive at 5400 RPM. No GPU. It had a Wi-Fi card. And I loved that thing to death, Andrew. I remember I was so excited. I went on eBay. I got like some money saved up for my birthday. I went on eBay. I bought my very first graphics card. Can you take a guess at what that was?
1060?
GT10 or GT730.
730.
2 gigabyte DDR3 model. Because at the time I was just getting into computers. So
wow.
Because since the computer had DDR3, I assumed I needed a DDR3 card. And as you can probably imagine, that was like 2000s.
Right.
That was along the era of the Core 2 Duo that I had in it. And I popped it in. I cranked Roblox up to max settings, and it was a turtle. I hopped on to, I think the game was Lumber Tycoon with my friend Connor. And I was like, dude, I just got a new graphics card. I'm so excited. And he was like, oh, what'd you get? And I was like, GT730. He said, oh, nice. And I cranked it up to max settings, and it just throttled. So I was like, oh no, something's wrong. And then I did some research and found out it was a terrible graphics card. I did a lot of custom work to that computer. I painted it, did some stuff. And then I was really excited because my birthday was coming up the next year. And I was a little more into computers. So I asked for a GTX 1650 from my grandparents. They got it for me. It was the Asus TUF model. It had 4 gigabytes of GDDR6. It was a dual fan design. I loved the heck out of that graphics card. It was literally my stuffed animal from when I was 5 years old. I carried it everywhere I went, and I carried the box. It was really funny, actually. We don't talk about that. So I put it in. I downloaded Fortnite because I was like, I know for a fact this graphics card can handle Fortnite. I hopped in. I won my first match at 15 FPS on low settings. Can you guess why?
Why?
Because I had a dual core processor from 2007.
So you couldn't just throw your new GPU in your old computer.
Yeah, exactly. And I said I had 4 gigs. I meant 8 gigs of RAM. And that was plenty. You can still game on 8 gigs of DDR3 today. Not great, but it still works. So basically, that next Christmas, I got a bunch of new computer parts. I built my computer. It was awesome. I had so much fun. Like the time of my life. And that was a lot better. I had my 10th Gen i7, my 16 gigs of RGB RAM, all my fans, my water cooler, my AIO water cooler. It was a really good looking build. I poured sweat and tears into that. I thought I broke it because I didn't post, but I just forgot to plug the power supply cable in the back and flip the switch on. And since then, I fell in love with computers. Like, that's what I want to do with my life from now on. And if you get an old computer, and assuming since it's old, it's going to be dusty, right? So it's obviously a fire hazard.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned so much about computers just based on taking them apart. I think I have like maybe like 25 disassembled computers like all together in my room right now. Like, I don't have the cases anymore because I just toss them out because they're of no use to me. So I just have like parts on parts on parts from people that have given them to me. I've bought some. It's just stuff like that. And sorry for taking so much time on this question, but it's such a good question.
No, I think that's really interesting because a lot of people just think, oh, I'll buy this pre-built PC for $700, and then next year when I get 1,000, I'll just buy myself a 3080 Ti and we'll be all good. And they don't realize that, well, I mean, you can't just throw the Stellar card in the computer and then expect better performance. But there's actually a lot of compatibility issues you have to worry about that prevent you from just doing that.
Yeah,
So,
especially most pre-builts on Amazon are like 2nd gen, 3rd gen, 4th gen.
don't buy a pre-built from Amazon.
Don't buy a pre-built
Don't buy
from
a pre-built
Amazon.
from Walmart. Don't buy a pre-built at all if possible.
Honestly, I'm going to be like not biased here, but like if you want a computer, hit me and Andrew up. Like,
Yeah,
we will help you spec a computer and build it.
Yep. Very good one.
Yeah, very good question. If you have an old system, don't worry about it. Clean it, sell it for like $50 maybe.
And if you have $1,000 to pour into your old computer, upgrade, like just divide the money and spend it equally amongst everything. Don't spend it all on one thing.
Yeah. And don't upgrade your old computer if it's more than 10 years old.
A few shorter questions. How do you print from a phone? Surprisingly enough, very few people can do this because it's kind of confusing. So whenever there's something you want to print on an iPhone specifically, you press the share button, you scroll down a little bit, you select print, and then it'll ask you to connect to your printer, and then you just click the print button. It's amazing the number of people at school who've asked me, like, how do I print this from my phone? Answer is share menu. This is a good one. How do we put a podcast together? So our workflow is basically every Friday after school, Cole and I come to our studio, and then we start recording. Takes us like an hour-ish to record.
Hour to 2 hours.
Hour to 2 hours. And then that weekend, we edit, schedule it to post Sunday night, and it gets posted Monday morning.
It's actually a lot easier than you'd think, but
yeah, it
also requires money.
It's a lot of work.
Really the only reason that we're doing this like we are right now is from the Complete Backyard. It's like, honestly, we like are forever grateful for them to make this happen for us.
Yes, if you're going to start a podcast, definitely look for a sponsor.
Even if it's like family members, like you and your partner's parents, or if it's your sibling, you and your parents chip in some money, right? Just to get you some starter gear.
Yeah. So if you're going to start a podcast, definitely like talk to someone you know who owns a business. Maybe like invite them to your house, sit with them on your patio, your fire pit, your pergola, that fun outdoor environment.
Yeah, or maybe like invite them to swim in your Goo Night swimming pool and spa.
Right, your brand new swimming pool. This is sponsored by the Complete Backyard. Next question. This is from a concerned parent. What safety measures can be put on iPhones for locating children, and what safety features can be used to restrict internet searches, apps, screen time, etc.?
So iPhones have this great feature that my parents so lovingly put on my phone called screen time.
Yeah.
You go into your family settings, you go to screen time, you have to turn on restrictions, you can set app limits on. So I have 4.5 hours on my phone before all the apps turn off. I have 30 minutes on YouTube, Instagram, Clash of Clans.
Screen time basically lets you limit how long your child can spend on each specific app. There's a feature,
or the entire phone.
There's a feature called downtime, and that turns off the phone completely except for a few apps during certain parts of the day. In terms of content restrictions, you can limit what apps they can download, what shows they can buy, what movies they can watch, what songs they can listen to.
It also has a built-in search, like adult content filter. So you just toggle the switch, it filters them.
You can click the button that says like limit websites, and that'll like filter out all illegal or adult websites. Great for your kid. But yeah, iPhones are pretty good with optimizing the phone for a kid. And then this all carries over to an iPad too. So if you buy your younger child an iPad instead of a phone, you have all these content and screen time restrictions and limits. So, and then you can locate, if you don't want to use Life 360, I don't blame you. Privacy
It's so bad.
gone. Phone battery life gone. You can use Apple's Find My, and that will let you see where your kids are in the world.
And I learned this the hard way, but it also alerts you whenever you turn location services off.
It does.
Yep.
So parents giving their kids a phone, there are definitely advantages to giving them an iPhone.
Yeah. So we're going to start doing the Q&A questions once a month. We're going to start doing some new fun things. So you have more than just tech news. We have some engagement, actually.
We're thinking about trivia.
Trivia, we're going to do funny Reddit posts about tech, stuff like that. If you have any recommendations, you can tweet at us. I am at ColeWWWeb.
And I'm at Utterly Drew.
That is episode 13 of Control-AC, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Have a good week.
Ciao, bro.